So, how can we define the regional movement? We can possibly define it as a movement for autonomy of identity and autonomy of development. Its objectives may be accommodative, maybe protectionist, welfareist, autonomist, separatists, and secessionists. There are numerous examples to support the submission that their genuine grievances, they're addressed, they settle down within the constitutionally propounded democratic structure of Indian nationalism. Regional movements, especially in a diverse society like India, they have contextualized formation. Therefore, it requires a componential analysis of the complex interplay of region, people, and the state. When we say regional movement, it immediately refers to the existence of a regional community with political overtone. In more than one sense, regional community is different from other social communities. In fact, region may consist of many social communities, which through a highly complex process of nation formation constitute themselves into a distinct regional community. And this regional community is generally formed on the basis of identity, of affinity, and interests. It is a community more in terms of horizontal comradeship than the uniformity or homogeneity scaling vertically. It's a definition given by one scholar, AKC, in his article Sub-Regions and State Formation in India. So, in the literatures on nationalism, we find two principally important but dichotomous accounts of nation formation. The perennialist, primordialist, and the other one is modernist. The primordialists consider identity as pre-given entity of distinct race, ethnicity, language, culture, religion. So these are all pre-given. So These individual attributes of identity are called the objective markers of identity. So a nation is a politicized ethno-cultural community extended in history and deeply rooted in socio-cultural traditions. Since such a community is historically embedded, it is territorially persistent as well. Thus, region in this context refers to a socially structured territorial space whose ecology and economy have deep impact on the making of a distinct and a visible common identity of the people living in the region. But how a regional community translates into a subnational movement. We have to take into consideration the methodological submission of modernization of the mobilization theory of nation formation. These are two crucial submissions of this theory. Conversion of the community into a movement in a process is a process of mobilization by the elites, intelligentsia, and leaders. And second, in order to provide further dynamics and cohesiveness to community consciousness, identity is reinvented and relocated in the contextual present. Myron Winner is one of the scholars who has a lot of research in this particular field. The process of identity formation is a complex one with several key elements. One element is the institutional structure, which shapes the framework within which group identities are maintained and also group identities are intensified. The federal system, the structure of political parties, the educational system, the media, they sought to reinforce some identities while undermining some others. And another element which researchers they have emphasized, what is called the reactive mechanisms. Group identities are often formed or reinforced when challenged by others. This is a reactive mechanism. In reaction to the challenge by others, this group identities are formed. So this is what is termed very interestingly as a reactive mechanism. So the challenge may come as a consequence of assimilative pressures, migration, economic competition, political threat, etc. And another element can be described as policy feedback. That's the third element. In this policy feedback, government policies in the form of entitlements and reservations. They induce groups to organize for political action, which in turn intensifies group identities. That is also another element. Sometimes government policies also can prompt this group formation. I mean, regional groups and all that, group identities. And another element also, so another element is the underlying cultural conception of the state's relationship to group identities. Whether, I mean, here is the issue is whether society is seen as subordinate to the state or whether society is viewed as autonomous. So it's a cultural perception. So India has been territorially reorganized into many states and union territories. If we, hello, from the closer analysis of the official practice of the state formation in India, it appears that there exist so many demands for separate states, and also at various points of time, separate states they have been created. And it appears that the demands for separate states and all that exist because of the non-congruence between the cultural boundary and the administrative boundary. In many cases, the present states they appear to be invented ones, and which have attempted to create common linguistic, administrative, and political identity among the people living within the different regions of the state. In fact, people of India, they live with many identities, but this never meant replacement of one identity with the other or the assimilation of many into one. So co-living with many identities is possible only through interconnectivity between them. But when this interconnectivity is missing or attempt is made to supplement this pre-given ethnic regional identity with invented official or state identity, the problem of legitimacy begins. So we can have a very quick journey through salient patterns of movements for statehood. The salient patterns of regional movements seeking separate state, it may be discerned. In India, territory and community, they're symbiotically linked. A region is known by the community which lives in it, and community is designated and characterized by the geospecifics of the given region. And the demand for separate statehood, it arises from the synthesis between the two, community and geography. And people having distinct socio-cultural identity concentrate in few contiguous districts within the existing state system. They seek a separate state in order to preserve, protect, and promote their identity. Then also some of the regional movements, they seek constitutional recognition, protection, and legitimation of their respective socio-cultural varieties by the state. And it is at this level that the demand for functional elevation of mother tongue to the level of education and administration is made. Then another pattern that is located within the realm of identity and development, regionalism for sub-regional groups, they serve as an ideology. And through this ideology, they seek to define their own administrative and political identity. So, what is the state's response to these regional movements? You know, there are various types of regional movements: suprastate regionalism, interstate regionalism, intrastate regionalism. So, these are various types of regionalism. But the state's response to these regional movements they have been having, we do not find any consistent policy in this regard. But certain principles can be analyzed. Their secessionist demand could not be considered. Rather, secessionism could be suppressed by all necessary means. This is one of the responsibilities. When the demand except form of secession, that must be suppressed. That is usually the policy of the state. Central government would not concede those regional demands based on exclusively upon religious differences. State cannot encourage that. State cannot encourage secessionism. I mean, the demand to secede away from the federation. That cannot be encouraged by the state. Then the demands for the creation of separate linguistic would not be considered unless such a demand is socially wide and economically viable. Suppose there is a demand for separation, regional movement on linguistic grounds, that can be considered only when that is politically and socially viable, economically viable, social wide. Otherwise, that cannot be considered. So, at various times, new states have been increased, carved out from the old states. Gujarat was formed in 1960, Nagaland 1963, Haryana 1966, Punjab 1966, Himachal Pradesh, Manipur 1972, Meghalaya 72, Tripura 1972, Sikkim 1975, Arunachal Pradesh 87, Mizoram 1987, Goa 1987, Jharkhand 2000, Uttaranchal 2000, Chhattisgarh 2000. So, so these states have been formed during different periods of time. So regional movements that indicate of the identity movements of the people in a particular region. There are both real reasons and also imaginary reasons for the rise and growth of these movements. And ever since India became independent, regional movements have been taking different parts. They have been, from different parts of the country on the basis of territoriality, ethnicity, and economic backwardness of the agitating areas. Since regional movements they are related to the socio-cultural and political processes, these are ongoing phenomenon. In a democratic country like India, these regional movements shall be always there, and they shall be a part and parcel of the political process of the country. Then we can have a discussion on the religious and communal movements. After regional movement, the religious and communal movements they have been also important features, glaring features of Indian subcontinent in general and India in particular. What is communal in political parlance and academic discussion? The communal is used sometimes in a very derogative way, representing narrow sectarian interests. In pre-independent India, political leaders, for example, the Indian Muslim League was described as a communal organization. For many Marxist and European scholars, they say that this is Muslim nationalism. So likewise, there is also Hindu nationalism, which emphasizes the common cultural and religious bond, creating an emotional attachment. So the seeds of communalism on religious lines, they have come up also in the early British period. For example, the divide and rule policy. What was that policy based on communalism? To divide the country on the religious lines. So the political ideology formed on the religious sentiments could not keep together the communities living in this subcontinent, despite strong secular nationalist sentiments reflected during the freedom struggle. The independence of India accompanied its partition of communal lines, though India altogether discarded the formation of state on the religious or communal sentiments and declared it as a secular state. You know, so far as the religious demography is concerned, the country has a total area of approximately 1.3 million square miles and population of slightly more than 1 billion. And according to the latest government estimates, Hindus constitute 82% of population, Muslims 12%, Christians 2.3%, Sikhs 2%, and others including Buddhists, Jains, and Parsis, Jews, and Baha'is less than 2%. Like that. This is a religious demography, roughly a representation of that. With such a vast and diverse religious configuration and having the history of rich religious origin, it is but natural that people of this land are bound to get influenced in their public and private activities by religious sentiment. Religion has the most important influence, sentimental influence on the life of an individual. If we have a very swift glance on Hindu communal and religious movements, there are Hindu revivalist movements during 19th century. It prepared the ground for the right-wing politics along which religious issues took place, the Hindu communalism. The Hindu Mahasabha, which was the major political force before independence, and which spoke for the cause of Hindus, diminished because of the influence of umbrella-like domination of Indian National Congress. After independence, other Hindu outfits were also put to the test of time, got little recognition in independent India. And also, RSS continued to penetrate the masses through social service projects, and also it tried to resuscitate the Hindu national spirit through a large network of sakhas in engaged in multifarious seva projects and various sub-organizations in the field of students, labor, farming, education, etc. Then also the rise of BHP and the issue of conversion. That is another important issue so far as this communal politics is concerned. Process of religious conversion, it has evoked grave concern among the members of the Sangh Parivar down the centuries, which were intensified and made to appear much more legitimate by giving the loss a patriotic and national color. It is widely assumed that Hinduism is unique among religious traditions. Conversion to other faiths, therefore, is a loss that cannot be recovered. So, Hinduism has a tradition in being non-proselyting. So non-proselytizing is naturally this Hindu tradition considers conversion to our faith as a loss which cannot be recovered. So from late 19th century onwards, as the expansion directed towards marginal groups and tribals became more organized, reclamation, sudhis or purification, reconversion, parivartan, or turning back, the term preferred by the BSP, that is Vishwa Hindu Parishad today, became more rampant. All these terms they have been coined to bring people back to their natural state, presuming that the targeted groups are Hindu in a more or less Sanskritized manner. So in this communal movements, also the Babri Masjid and Ram Janmabhoomi issues, it has come up. And also, like Hindu revivalism, there is also Islamic religious and communal movements. Along with these Hindu religious and social movements in the 19th century, the rising tide of Muslim politics, it was quite visible in the first part of the 20th century. particularly after the formation of the All India Muslim League in 1906 in the British age. So the Muslim communalism, like other right-wing organizations, started acquiring color on the religious and political lines and inhibited the integration and assimilation of Muslim community in Indian society. Even after the formation of secular India, the demands for maintaining exclusive identity remained consistent. The concept of religious brotherhood was put to use for this purpose. So the slogan of religious brotherhood remained the main weapon for the political fight of Muslims, even in post-partition India. A.Q. Ansari, one of the prominent Congress leaders, he also established a Muslim front inside the Congress, demanding that Congress party should give election tickets to Muslims on the basis of their population. Then also there are these trends of Hindu revivalism, then Islamic religious movements, communal movements, and also there is religio-lingual issues. Along with the demand for separate electorate, the Urdu language has also acquired religious scholars and Muslims, irrespective of their region and mother tongue. They have constantly raised this issue of Urdu as a part of their religious cultural heritage. And also there are communal and terrorist activities and the use of Islam. And also the government officially banned some of these communal extremist organizations. Government officially banned, for example, students SIMI in 2001 on the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So, given the terrorist insurgency throughout the globe, the Islam is the target of state in most of the non-Islamic countries. Then also like Hindu revivalism and Islamic, say, religious movements, communal movements. There is also Christian religious and communal movements. Today, Christianity is generally perceived to be associated with the legacy of Western rule, which forced its religion upon the Indians during their colonial period. Christians have been, you know, Christianity with its charitable, educational, and medical institutions has been able to woo the masses to great extent. The activities of the Christian missionaries, their social service and all that, they're meant to the masses to galvanize support for them. So the issues of discord between Christians and Hindus or Christians and Muslims, they have been the issues related to conversion. So Christianity have been target of attacks by Hindutva forces, especially the RSS, VHP, Bajrang Dal, and the Hindutva forces. They argue that the Christians have to Indianize themselves. In March 2001, K. Sudarshan, the head of the RSS, stated that Muslims and Christians should sever their links with Makkah and the Pope and instead become Swadesis. And along with these issues of discord, there have been some attempts to resolve the differences between the Hindutva forces and Christians. Then also there is Sikh religion and communal movements, founded on the traditions of Bhakti movement in 15th and 16th century. Sikh religion became a powerful source of the mobilization of the Sikh community in 20th century. And the Shiromani Akali Dal and Shiromani Gurudwara Prabandhan Committee, they are the two principal organizations which mobilized Sikhs on religious lines during the first part of the 20th century. Even after independence, the Akali Dal continued to mix religion with politics in order to maintain separate Sikh identity and to make community powerful in the political area. Master Tara Singh, the most prominent leader of Akali Dal up to 1962, viewed it exclusively in terms of political interest of the community. So in 1970s, the Akali Dal challenged the dominance of Congress in Punjab politics. In order to meet this challenge, the Congress used the services of Sikh religious leaders, including Sir Jarnail Singh Bhindranwala in 1980 assembly elections. And realizing their political significance, the Sikh religious leaders asserted their autonomy, demanded their share in area of political power. This gave rise to this competitive politics among political parties, Congress, Akali, and religious and militant leaders to use religion on the one hand and movement for Khalistan, a Sikh homeland, on the other. So the large-scale violence, which included terrorist operations, Blue Star, and assassinations of political leaders, activists, anti-Sikh riots in Delhi in 1984, were some of the impacts and repercussions of the use of Sikh religion in politics. So, these discussions on various trends of communalism, Hindu tribalism, Islamic movement, then also the Sikh religion and communal movements, Christian communal movements, it clearly points out that India, which has been a land of religion, is bound to be influenced by religious practices, beliefs, and rituals. And these socio-religious movements they have proved to be instrument of national consciousness in the 19th and early 20th century. However, with the passage of time, due to one or the other reason, they have acquired communal and political color. And this religious rivalry within and between the communities, they have roots that they are centuries old. Their tensions at times they're exacerbated by poverty, class, ethnic difference. So still now we find the tensions between the Muslims and Hindus, between Hindus and Christians, they continue to pose a challenge to the concept of secularism, tolerance, and diversity on which the Indian state was founded. Then, with a brief reference to these are all communal movements, religious communal movements, Hindu movements, Islamic movements, Sikh movements, Christian movements, and all that. We shall have a reference brief movements. That is the movement in the field of agriculture. These agrarian movements, you know, they include the movements of agrarian classes, those who have resorted to collective action. And this has happened both in pre-independent India and also post-independent India. And these are related to agriculture in terms of working on the land or in terms of both working on the land and also in ownership. So these agrarian movements of the agricultural laborers, poor and small peasants, tenants, farmers, kulaks, rich peasants, and the rural rich. So the movements of these classes of the people can be termed as agrarian movements. And the issues which are taken up in this agrarian movement are generally economic. But in several cases, the economic and social issues they overlap. This happens when the agrarian class is both one economic group and also a social group. So one example can be taken case of Dalits and women. The economic and social or self-respect dignity are also involved. Agrarian society, that is why it's not a homogeneous society. These agricultural classes are divided on economic and social basis. The mobilization of an agrarian group, it depends on the specific issues related to it. And the collaboration between the different groups or conflict among them also depends on the convergence of the group interests. So the agrarian groups can be of these different types. The rural group, which include agricultural laborers, small, poor, and marginal peasants. Then the farmer, middle peasants, blacks, rich peasant, and the rural rich. So these agrarian movements they have studied from various angles. traditionally speaking, the study on agrarian movement can be made either on the Martian line or non-Martian line. So there is non-Martian approach and the other is Martian approach. The Marxists, they analyze these movements in the light of the social relation of production and the economic relations, because that was the very core of Marxism. So from these economic angles, the angle of economic relation and production, they have analyzed this movement. For example, how the poorer agrarian classes get mobilized against their exploitation by the exploiting classes. This is the Marxist approach. Non-Marxist approach to the study of this movement, they give more emphasis to the cultural and non-economic factors. In early 1980s, there was an addition to this Marxian approach influenced by Gramsci, you must be knowing Gramsci is a new Marxian. His writings, it has influenced another approach, led to another approach, which can be known as the subaltern approach. And subaltern school has had the most profound impact on the study of agrarian movements. It has been popularized by Ranjit Guha. Ranjit Guha in the series of subaltern studies. And this subaltern approach is highly critical of the classical Marxism, which gave primacy to the economic factors over other factors. But subaltern school argues that the peasants have their own consciousness, leadership, and also have their own cultural factors, which play much more important role than the class or than the economic factors. So these are the three main approaches: Marxian, non-Marxian, subaltern. Subaltern virtually is a approach being influenced by the neo-Marxian called Gramsci. So scholars like Ghanshyam Saha, while reviewing the literature on social movements in India, in his book Social Movements in India, Review of Literature, Ghanshyam Saha points out that political science has been averse to the people's participation in politics and movement. In the similar vein, a section of literature has categorized the peasants as passive and docile subjects, uninterested in participating in movement. So it is his version that most of the peasants, they are not interested in the movement. They lack that zeal for participation. So almost all the regions of our country witnessed agrarian movement during the pre-independence period, popularly known as the peasant movements. And these movements involve all exploited classes, tenants, agricultural laborers, artisans, etc. Among the most prominent of these movements are in UP, Kheda movement, in Gujarat, UP old movement of UP, Kheda movement in Gujarat, and also there are peasant movements in Champaran in Bihar, then Wahhabi, Karabi, and Tevaga movement of Bengal, and Telangana movement in Madras presidency during those British days, and those Telangana movement now, the present Andhra Pradesh, Telangana region, and all that. So agrarian movements also in post-independent period, certain developments in Indian political economy, naturally in the post-independent era, These peasant movements can provide the landmark. These are the policy measures introduced by the state during the 1950s, both at the national and also provincial level. You know, briefly you can take in terms of the genesis of the farmers' movements. Since farmers' movements are the post-green revolution movement and largely occurred in the green revolution belt, they found the term some trade against the agricultural sector. The farmers responded positively to the alternate mode mobilization, which was marked by the mobilization on the apolitical or non-political plan. The massive political mobilization by the non-party political organization was by the BKU under Tiath. For the first time, the traditional institution of the caste council was active in mobilizing the farmers. The traditional leadership of the caste council, which was headed by the leader of those councils of the Jats, Mahendra Singh Tikait, also included the leaders of these councils of the several castes and all that. And also, globalization had a lot of impact on farmers' movement, which I have a brief discussion on the in the previous classes through the Donkel draft and general agreement on trade and tariff, there's a gap. So unlike earlier movements, those of the farmers in the era of globalization have reacted to the issues related to globalization. The post-green revolution saw the rise of the movements of the collapse of the rich peasants in the prosperous regions of the country, and some scholars also call these new social movements, and the characteristics are apolitical in nature, based on the rural-urban divide, concerned with the issues of commercial economy in agriculture, with new mode of mobilization and new type of leadership. Even we see that the globalization, which has evoked contradictory responses from the leaders of these organizations, and this period also has seen the rise of alternative mobilization of the rural poor, which saw the participation of the civil society organizations and intellectual activities. So I think it's time is 10 p.m. and 7 and 4 minutes past 10. So I think I should end up my discussion here and look forward for the next class. Thank you. Thank you very much for the patient listening. So should I?
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. So now I
Thank you, sir.
thank you very much. So today we have covered this some important discussions on the Iran revolution, then also women movement, regional movements, and religious and communal movements. Of course, very briefly we have touched upon because they're all very vast topics and all that. Okay, thank you very much.
Sir, କାଲି ତ ନାହିଁ
କାଲି ନାହିଁ
କ୍ଲାସ୍, ଏକାଥରେ
ପରଦିନ
ପରଦିନ ଅଛି।
ସାରିବା ଯାହା ବାକି ରହିଲା। ଓକେ, ଥ୍ୟାଙ୍କ ୟୁ ଭେରି ମଚ୍।
हो
So,
थँक्यू
thank
सर.
you. Wish you best of luck.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.